Jeffrey N. Walker is the series manager and co-editor for the legal and business volumes of the Joseph Smith Papers. Raised in Michigan, Jeff served a mission in the Canadian Montreal Mission. Upon his return, he completed a BS from Western Michigan University, magna cum laude. Jeff earned a JD cum laude from the J. Reuben Clark Law School, where he served as an editor for the BYU Law Review. He practiced law in Los Angeles and Salt Lake City and worked as general counsel for a regional healthcare company, a national consultant for LexisNexis, as well as a founding partner of the law firm Holman & Walker. He is the president and co-owner of Western Architectural Services and a founder of the Precision Time. He's also a trustee and treasurer for the Mormon Historic Sites Foundation and the managing editor of the Mormon Historic Studies. Jeff is currently an adjunct professor in the Department of Church History and Doctrine and the J. Reuben Clark Law School at BYU. He's married to the former Elizabeth Hepburn, and they have 4 children. With that, I introduce Jeff Walker.
Well, thank you, Brother Morris, for that great conversation on Oliver. I share a love for him. Of course, he was a lawyer, and so we have to keep our friends close. He turned 200 last year, and as we contemplated what we might do to celebrate his great birthday, after all the pageantry and necessary things we did for Joseph's, we decided to look at his life a little more closely, and I think it's a look that's long overdue. I actually had the opportunity to spend some time in Tiffin, and we actually located over 2,300 pages of his legal practice as he practiced there for nearly 10 years. And it's quite astounding to first realize how poorly lawyers' penmanship is, but how beautiful Oliver's penmanship was. And you could pick his handwriting out from almost every court document. Matter of fact, his partner, Joel Wilson, often had Oliver pen his briefs for him because his writing was so elegant, which only makes sense, saying he would be the primary scribe of the entire Book of Mormon. I'm happy to be here today and talk about things that are not always pleasant in church history, but things that probably have not been considered close enough to understand some of the nuances that might have them more real to us. Certainly, the persecutions in Missouri was a dark period for the church. Some of the darkest times for Joseph as he would spend those months after months in Liberty Jail, a jail that he could not even stand upright in. I had the opportunity last year to actually give a talk, and the patrons, while very nervously watching, allowed me to stand in those same area in that jail where he lived for those 6 months. And what a tender and choice opportunity to realize that some of the most sublime scriptures would be received in that 14 by 14 room. I remember one of the last verses of Doctrine and Covenants, section 123, always caught my attention. At the very end of those great liberty sections, the Lord counseled Joseph and maybe all of us to go about our lives doing all that we can cheerfully, and then being willing to stand still and watch the arm of the Lord revealed. And certainly that is a challenge for the saints in Missouri during the 1830s, as well as for us today in our places. And today I would like to talk a bit about what is often referred to as Joseph's escape from liberty. I'd like to change the title, if I might, because I do believe maybe a better title for it would be Joseph's release from liberty. Because I believe once you start looking at the facts more carefully and concertedly, only one conclusion can really be reached, and that is that Joseph and his colleagues never escaped on way to Boone County, but they were actually released with the complete permission orchestrated by the legal authorities in Missouri. To understand that, you have to go back in time and realize a bit of the history of what brought Joseph and his friends to Liberty Jail and what ultimately would drive the saints all the way across the state of Missouri back over into Illinois to Nauvoo. We have to realize that early on, the church started in its very first missionary efforts to look for Zion, the very embodiment of Joseph's administration. He would send his most trusted friend and scribe, Oliver, who would bring his new convert, the Campbellite minister, Parley P. Pratt. They would have tremendous success as they would work through that mission, ultimately resulting in the finding of a place for the gathering of the saints in Missouri in independence. In those first couple years, from 1831 to 1833, dramatic increases of Mormons came into Jackson County. And by the end of 32, we had nearly 1,200 saints living in this frontier outpost. That growth came great persecution and trouble, significantly caused by the nature of our faith, the nature of our political capacity, nature of our economic desires. We would then find by July of 1833 that the first of several forceful events would happen. This would be, of course, the burning and destruction of Phelps' home and business, the printing presses. Also, we know that the good Bishop Partridge would be tarred and feathered as he sent Phelps and his wife, who was expecting, out of town, and told him, "I'll watch the house the best I can." And so the good bishop took the beating. We know from that point they would be driven just north that winter of 33 up into Clay County. There they would stay just but for a short period of time, realizing that their stay would only be temporary and that they need to find a more permanent solution. Now you have to realize the Mormons, as we still are, a very optimistic group. And we also think pretty big. We don't think small. And Joseph never thought small. He didn't think small of Missouri either. But often we don't see it in context of exactly what was happening in the environment in Missouri at that time. This is a map of Missouri in the 1830s to take an idea of what it looked like. Today, when you talk about Jackson County, the place of gathering, you would look at one area that would be that in blue would be what Jackson County is today. In Joseph's day, however, when he received the revelation that to say, buy all the land which you can purchase in Jackson County and the counties round about and leave the residue in my hand, we're talking about a significantly greater amount of property. And the reason that's important is because once we leave Jackson and this significant land mass that we were looking to start to acquire, we were also looking for a replacement of that sort of land mass. And so when we realized by 35 and early into 36 that we were not going to be allowed to stay in Clay County, which was just north of Jackson, that the citizens there, their patience and their willingness to accommodate us, we almost doubled their population in that county when we came. So you can imagine having a visitor that would actually overrun the house. We realized that we needed to find a new place to try to settle. And realizing the problems that we had back in our Jackson experience, we decided that we would employ legal help to help us try to legally obtain land that would protect us. And so one of the lawyers that we had retained during the Jackson expulsion was Alexander Donovan. He had just become a first-term House member in the House of Representatives in Missouri. He was from Clay County. Clay County, of course, is where Liberty Jail is. He had replaced his law partner, Atchison, who had also been retained as legal counsel for the church. Interesting, it'd be his only term that Donovan would spend in the legislature. And he would do really one significant piece of legislation. He was initially put on the committee, per his request, to be over the creation of new counties in Missouri. And he would then sponsor a bill to provide for the Mormons all of what he termed the unoccupied and unincorporated portions of Ray County. And what that would include would be this area right here. Now, if you look at it, it looks pretty close. If you're Joseph and the boys trying to figure out a replacement property, the unincorporated portions of Ray County would be a pretty significant landmass. And this is where Joseph perceived that they would be moving. In fact, through the summer and fall of 1836, dramatic moves into these areas would already commence. Matter of fact, I've gone through all the land records just in Caldwell County as of January of 1837 and found 205 residents living in Caldwell County. Over 170 of those were acquired all in 1836, and almost all of them were Mormons. The reason why that's important is because that county would not be created till December 29th of 1836. So before even the county was created, Mormons were moving in dramatic numbers, not only in the Caldwell County, which was a negotiated deal, but also up into Daviess County and in the surrounding counties. The concept that has often been prescribed that the Mormons had made a deal to only be in Caldwell County, and that when we left Caldwell County and moved into Daviess and other, that we violated that deal, and that somehow validated their claim that we should be driven out, just doesn't factually fit what happened. What happened in the realities and the backroom deals that Donovan was able to broker, he was only able to get a small county called Caldwell. Typically, a county would have 16 townships. Caldwell would only be given 12. The bottom 4 would be the red area.